for you who don't know me, my name's Dominic Ridley-Moy, and I run the Behaviour Change Network, help organisations apply behaviour change principles and run training, also co-chair CIPR's local public services group. And today we're going to be hearing from John-Paul Danon from CAN, and CAN are the kind of basically, they're the one-stop shop for campaigns, so they help you with everything you need to run your campaigns, and they're great to work with. I use them personally all the time. Got more people introducing themselves. Thank you for saying where you're from. Do drop that in the chat, and if you've got any questions as we go along, do ask questions. So if we can go on to the next slide, please, John-Paul. So today, an all-out kind of webinars is basically, it's about offering something free. So we know that that particularly local authorities are struggling with their finances at the moment. So we wanted to do something where we're getting people together, getting comms people together, people are working waste and recycling, helping you stay ahead of the curve, thinking about some insights and tactics that you can employ, what kinds of things you can do in terms of amplifying your campaign. So John-Paul's going to talk a bit about those kind of tactics, how you can roll campaigns out at pace, all that kind of thing, and some of the things we can do today. So today is all about food waste again, but this time John-Paul is going to focus on reducing consumption. So that very specific behaviour, because a lot of the time and a lot of the problems with food waste is because we buy too much in the first place. And last time we covered much more about kind of food waste recycling and caddies and things like that. And this is honing in on that very specific behaviour. So some of the tactics that you can take away, a bit about insights and barriers to people doing the right thing, and also how we can all kind of work together. So how we can collaborate more and have campaigns where we work together. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to John-Paul, who's going to kick off today. John-Paul.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, everyone, for giving up your time to come and see this. Hopefully, there'll be at least a handful of things that you can take away and apply in your day-to-day job. So I wanted to start with why do we need to focus on reducing consumption, purchasing, in order to help us with addressing food waste volumes. A lot of what we talk about is normally about increasing recycling rates. And so success can sometimes be defined as an increase in tonnage of cardboard collected or food collected, and that could be seen as a success. But going back to those reduce, renew, reuse and recycle, another important part of reducing impact on the climate is to stop buying things that we don't need or don't use. And there are terrifying estimates saying up to 40% of household food is wasted, which is a staggering number. And if you valued all of that at retail prices, it would be worth about £14 billion every single year that just goes into bins or into food recycling if you have it. And that generates, you know, the production and then the dealing with that waste generates 20 million tons of carbon, which it seems like something that we should be addressing. And I know that the rollout of food waste schemes, the recycling of food waste into energy, all of these are very powerful and important programs. And for the unavoidable food waste, it's important to have that in place. But reducing overconsumption would be good for a whole range of reasons. But when we start to address it, we need to be really honest about the challenges and the scale of that challenge. Food, you know, looking at that fridge, I feel quite happy and excited by it. It's nice to have, you know, a full fridge rather than an empty one. It's associated with success, with celebration, and with love and connection in terms of how we cater for our families, how we demonstrate, you know, how we can convey love and so on. Combined with that, the retail industry or the food industry is making consumption easier and easier. And they are experts at all the little behavioural tricks and triggers that encourage us to do this. They're concerned with sales and increasing sales and market share. And they have a lot of tried and tested ways of encouraging us to purchase more, to purchase more variety, more volume, the perception of good value, and many other things. And so it's really important to understand that that's an issue. I think there's also the point that over purchasing does also lead to overconsumption, which has huge health problems for us. It creates many health problems, which are also very expensive to deal with. So when you start to tackle reduction in purchasing, a better way maybe of framing it is to encourage conscious consumption. Because when you talk about reduction or less, you trigger in very deep recesses of people's brains things like loss aversion. It's not particularly attractive. Having a full fridge is desirable. It's a sign of plenty to be able to cater for yourself and for others with a lot of food that is enjoyable. So we need to know that it's not just a physiological need that we're talking about. It goes far higher up the hierarchy of needs. It's associated with security. It's deeply interconnected with family and care and love. And I think that people sometimes use food as a reward and as a sign of success. So you've got to be careful. Now, those things can still be achieved whilst waste is being reduced. And some of the drivers for conscious consumption could be things like improving one's health, reducing wasted money, so improving one's health. And there are other approaches that might help increase sense of community. So these are things that hopefully we can balance against the natural resistance that there might be at a subconscious level to reducing or changing the way that we buy food. So in order to change the way that people consume, you need to change the way they shop. It's a bit like the phrase of saying, if you have healthy things in your fridge, you'll eat healthily. I think that goes back to if you shop differently, you'll have healthier things in your fridge that will eat healthy. So we need to think about how we encourage people to shop in a way that avoids significant wastage of food. And again, we need to be really clear, especially when we're talking about planning these kinds of activities, about what we're up against. You have consumer habits, you have retailer habits, all being played out at scale all the time. In your location, you are probably talking to 2 decision makers on average in most households who are influencing the purchasing of food, which can be done in an efficient way, but that's a large number of people that you need to be prompting at the right place at the right time. And in order to really encourage someone to make a switch, you need to deliver multiple prompts. Now, if you're going to take on the way that supermarkets market themselves and the hierarchy of needs of all residents, there really isn't an amount of money or resources that could reliably do that quickly. So the fact that the public sector has limited resources in terms of budget, but also in terms of time, is a challenge, as is the limitations around data, consumption data and service data. So I think it's well worth, if you're going to tackle the reduction challenge, to be really clear in terms of communicating with internal stakeholders that the chances of success are not high, and that you're going to need some superpowers that maybe the retailers don't have. And so that's what I wanted to sort of, after this slightly gloomy slide, start to orientate around to. So what makes someone change where they shop? Well, some information on this online, some quick desk research talked about bad experiences and repeated bad experiences in their particular shop. New outlets opening, encouraging people to try something different. If their product requirements change or products are stopped in one place, that will encourage people to try new locations. And there are changes in habits around seasons. So I think M&S are a massive beneficiary from picnic season and from Christmas season. Now, you can't really influence these things massively. Supporting your local shops, for example, could be one angle. But where the public sector does operate a lot more is around these sort of motivational fronts. So the potential motivations for changing your shopping habits could be to change the way you shop, to improve your health, to reduce cost, and sometimes as well to improve quality, to move towards more organic products or something that's going to be better for your body. Now, there are other prompts generally with behaviour change that help people guide where interventions will work more successfully. So you can improve the efficacy of interventions by intervening at times like health crises, when people change location, when they land somewhere new, there's a big opportunity to rewire how they think and what they do. And there are also key life events. So starting to think about, well, what are our superpowers that could help us plan activities and communications that help us change the way people shop? Well, here's some ideas. So when someone moves house, they usually have to set up or change their council tax account. And councils obviously have that data point. So placing ads on site around council tax, but also to people that accept cookies, remarketing to them gently over a period as they've moved in and moved house, is a really important point in someone's life where you can suggest new habits, while into healthier behaviours and also different shopping behaviours. We also have those sort of key life events like births, marriages, and so on, where people make new plans due to significant circumstance changes with your registry office pages. And there's also health interventions where people might go and have a health check, interact with an NHS service, a GP or someone like that. And that again is another point where someone is researching for that. You can be there at that point on your own estate with messaging and then with the ability to remarket to that individual. Now, this is an often untapped resource. And I think that when in that idea of reusing what you already have, using audiences and using free advertising space in these sorts of locations is something that the retail sector doesn't have, but that you do. And so incorporating a sort of always on approach to your campaigns to nudge people at these key life events towards changing shopping habits or changing the way they consume food is a really good opportunity. And that can sit there and just run away in the background for you with almost no cost. Now, you can see here that actually we're looking at different aspects of what might prompt change. And it's well worth sometimes zooming out of the waste and recycling service messaging mindset to think about other campaigns that your organizations might be running where audiences can be shared and messages can be overlapped to achieve your objective. So going back to the prompt around improving one's wealth, if you associate the food waste that the household is generated, whether it goes into a food waste bin or it goes into a regular bin, with money, and you then use the cost of living messaging that the council is delivering to talk about how you can shop more efficiently, waste less food, that's a way of reframing an objective that waste and recycling might have as something that's good for the individual and will keep pounds in their pocket. And when you're seeing that, up to 40% of household food waste is wasted, that's pretty powerful. And so collaborating with cost of living, but then also maybe encouraging the cost of living campaign to collaborate with shopping local campaigns. So where you have your local business improvement districts or your local economic communications, encouraging people or making the behaviour of shopping at your greengrocer rather than your supermarket, so that you buy what you need and only buy what you need, and positioning that as a way of keeping money in your pocket, improving your health, and having a better sense of community could also be something that helps achieve your objective whilst also achieving the objective of the Shop Local campaign and kind of achieving some of the objectives of the cost of living campaign at the same time. Then the other area as well to look at, which again could be overlapped with all of these other campaigns, is around public health, and where people are being encouraged, yes, of course, to move more, but also to change diets, to consider increased vegetable intake, reduced processed food intake, increased consumption of soup, healthy soup and things like that. You can see how that again could overlap potentially with Shop Local campaigns. And there are also those really strong intervention points around health checks for over 40s and so on. So encouraging public health, who often have much larger budgets, especially at the ICB level, to incorporate messaging and multivariate messaging around food consumption, which has the additional benefit of achieving your food waste reduction objective, I think is something that, again, uniquely in the public sector, you're potentially able to do, and something that means that your campaigns stay always on, have multiple prompts, which is really important for behaviour change, and frame food waste in lots of different ways, therefore increasing your chances of having a message that sticks with the target audience. So it's well worth reaching out to colleagues in your organisations, ICB, internal public health, bids, local economic communications, and with the cost of living crisis not going away, understanding who's planning those communications and seeing if there's a way that you can share messaging space, audiences, and help share each other's content. So just to sum up on a few of these points, and this is a very light touch view on all of these things, it's an incredibly difficult task to change the way people shop and the way people consume. However, the public sector does have many, if not most, of the most important key life stages, behavioural triggers and events within its communications and within its service estate. So connecting with colleagues across these key areas and planning a long time in advance and for always on campaigns to prompt new shopping habits with public health, with the local economy to encourage shopping small and with micro businesses, and also to equate food waste with money disappearing from your pocket, cost of living, but also to consider connecting with local influencers. So chefs in local restaurants talking about the things that they do to reduce food waste, reusing food, making food and buying what they need. And also to then have the small businesses talking about where they are, how they look after people, and acting as influencers in your campaigns to nudge that kind of behaviour, thereby giving positive benefits to local economy and shop campaigns as well. Thoroughly recommend making use of your own channels, not just because they're free, but they're always on. They hit some of those key life points. You are normally the biggest media owner in your area. So when you take your out-of-home estate, your website, obviously, your email newsletters, you've got the chance for zero cost to have always on messaging and critically to test that messaging before you potentially pay to put it in other places. So a very sort of cost and energy efficient way of delivering messaging and testing what works. And in the same vein, use the audiences that you uniquely have access to. So people who've just set up a new council tax account and moved to the area, it's a great opportunity to plant new behaviours, plant the seed for new behaviours in their minds. You can also use audiences like parents who you may be talking to at one point about MMR vaccines, to also talk about tips for reducing waste. Families are very large, very significant contributors to food waste. And then think again about people who may have interacted with cost of living and coming back to them with a message, remarket them afterwards, about how, you know, getting them to be conscious of the amount of food that's not being consumed and how that equates to money that could have been spent on other things. And then again, that point around health checks. I would also thoroughly suggest that don't aim for sort of 2-week or 2-month or 3-month plan. You definitely want to be working at always on campaigns. And therefore, if you start planning now, start making those connections now, these things can work in sort of always on way. Not all of them will work all of the time, but you can make those connections and start planning so that you have dramatically increased your chances of success and hopefully increase the chance of those wonderful cross-pollinations happening, which will generate outcomes for you with relatively low amounts of investment in time, energy, and resources. And also to help that planning, we, as ever, are giving away this sort of free search insight so you can see what's on the minds of residents. So drop Dominic or me a line. We'd be more than happy to show you what terms people are typing in around food waste collection in your area. So hopefully that's been useful. Dominic.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was really interesting, John-Paul. And I think for me, one of the things that is really interesting is just thinking about particularly if anyone has read Nudge or has heard of the Behavioural Insights Unit, or the Nudge Unit as it is often referred to. It's really interesting how a lot of their early trials, when they first started doing wide-scale behavioural experiments, were looking at something like, it would be kind of one service and piggybacking something onto another service. So they do something, there was something with the DVLA website where they basically asked people at the end, do you want to be an organ donation donor? And they tested that at scale, I think, through letters, which is really, really interesting. And that was something that made a big difference and was obviously what you were talking about. So I was just going to ask you, do you have any kind of tips for if people are doing things at scale about how they can test different images, different videos, different graphics, anything like that at all?
Yes, so I think if you've got web advertising installed on your site, use that, because that will be tens of thousands of free impressions that you can test messages. It's not perfectly scientific, but the alternatives aren't either. I think understanding what resonates with people is really important. So I would look at not just an A and a B variant, but actually multivariate tests with set amounts of budget applied to each, to understand what resonates with the audience and audiences that you're speaking to. But the wonderful thing about digital advertising and programmatic now is you don't have to sort of do a test, then stop, then feedback in and go. As long as you start to plan with lots of different messaging and lots of different prompts, you can see what's working and what's translating into post-interaction activity and measure that accordingly. So having your audience pixels in place, not just for remarketing, but for measuring outcomes, and then seeing which messages and messages with which audiences result in either long-standing traffic at the other end or sign up to some sort of activity or some sort of action. And that's where having multiple campaigns can be really important. So signing up to a health check, or committing on social media to shop locally more frequently, sharing these different outcomes, you basically enable lots of different paths towards the outcome you're trying to deliver. So yes, you can test with either free or relatively low amounts of money, and then use a mixture of machine learning in the various platforms and human intervention to then decrease cost per measurable outcome over time. I'm sorry, that sounds like a lot of scientific work, but it basically means doing more with less and getting better at it.
Just going to pick up a few things in the chat. So we will share email contact details, and the webinar will be recorded as well. So don't worry if you missed it. And if you've got any other questions, do drop them in the chat now. And the other thing that we're looking to do, so we want to have more of these all about not just what we're doing, but what all of you are doing. So if you've got any case studies you want to share, anything interesting that you'd like to basically highlight, all the great work that you're doing, because I know that loads of you are going to be doing really, really good stuff in your organisation. So we'd love to share what you're doing. It could be either a blog. Feel free to get in touch with us and come along to one of our webinars and share what we're doing. And it'd be great to kind of get this going as a real community with helping each other out and sharing what you're doing. I'm just going to pick up another point actually, which was, I think you were talking about local influencers and some of the people you can reach out to, and another point you made earlier, and bring them two together, which I think that actually when we say local influencer, I'm quite old school, so it's John-Paul's point that actually a local influencer could be a parent's child. So it could be a child, it could be the kids that get the parents to do the right thing. So think about everyone who could influence behaviour and really sort of hone it down.
Just to back that up as well, I think on we've seen in certain parts of that there is and when you're tackling something around, you know, the social value of being able to deliver abundance and demonstrate success, having people who are respected and known for being good with food means that is not that is a positive thing to move towards. So using local chefs and chefs from specific cultures, for example, to talk about how they provide and what they do with leftovers and things like that will work incredibly well. Much better, for example, than just reposting a rap creative. And by the way, those are great, but we see everywhere that people from your community talking about being savvy with food consumption will work better.
And I think that's everything for questions at the moment. So without further ado, I think we'll say thank you to everyone for coming along. Hope it's been useful. And as I said earlier, that we're going to do lots more of these, and we want them to be all about you as much as us. So do let us know if you'd like to share everything. Also, I'll also drop you a note. I've got a food waste masterclass which will be kicking off in June. So if you want a more detailed run through and help with your food waste campaigns, whether that's you have food waste or are introducing it, as well as how to sort of reduce consumption, do let me know and I can send you more details about my course, and we'll send around John-Paul's details as well. So if you've got any questions about programmatic, how to run campaigns, all the different things, all the channels that John-Paul was talking about, he'll be happy to help. So thank you very much for coming, and we will see you all again soon. Take care. Bye now.